Do you ever feel like you're spending too much on groceries and scrambling for dinner and still ending up with meals your family barely enjoys? That was me, totally frustrated every night in the kitchen. But now I can make hearty, delicious dinners from scratch without breaking the bank, and my family actually looks forward to mealtime. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I create frugal, from scratch meals that are simple, satisfying, and budget friendly. If you're new, I'm Erica. My husband Mark and I and our 3 kids live fully off-grid in Canada. We try to live a healthy and self-sufficient lifestyle, and that's what we share about in our videos. So I'd love if you would subscribe to our channel. I try to keep cooking really simple, and I kind of have a formula most of the time. It's just a meat and a carb and a veggie. This way I can just have all of those items that we regularly use on hand, and they can be just cheap, simple ingredients like onions and garlic and potatoes and certain cuts of meat. The first recipe I'm sharing here is venison shanks. Now, you can do this with beef shanks or really any other type of shank. And a shank is a lesser known cut. It's very, very tough and full of cartilage and connective tissue. And so it definitely requires braising, slow, low cooking. But it is one of my favorite cuts because it's so rich and tender and delicious, and you can just tell it's full of goodness when you eat it. The recipe is very simple. I will link the full recipe on my blog below the video. But you salt and pepper your shanks, you sear them on the stove, and make this mixture of garlic and bone broth and ketchup and a couple other things. And then once the shanks are seared, you deglaze your Dutch oven with that bone broth mixture, scrape up all the good brown goodness on the bottom, and then return your shanks to the Dutch oven. Cover it and braise it for at least 5 hours, and your meat is going to come out falling apart. When it's done cooking, I remove the meat from the Dutch oven, put the Dutch oven back on the stove, bring it back to simmering, and whisk in a cornstarch slurry to make it a lovely thick gravy. And then I will return all of the shredded meat to the gravy and serve it all together like that. I then usually serve it over mashed potatoes. Of course, you can serve it over anything you like to serve a delicious meat and gravy dish on. On this day, we had some fried potatoes with the meat on its own and some cucumber slices. A simple, frugal, delicious meal. This next recipe is one of my favorites. It is a go-to staple in my house, and I'll tell you about it in a second. But first, I wanted to say that when I started cooking from scratch, I realized it could be fun. It was first intimidating, but it could actually be fun and result in really delicious food like shanks that I'd never had before I started cooking from scratch. But most importantly, I noticed it was a simple way to improve my energy and just feel good day to day. And that change was part of a series of really small, doable changes that I made to go from exhausted with multiple health issues to now thriving with consistent energy, even as a mom of 3 little girls. And I walk through the simple, practical steps that I took in my free workshop. It's called the Well-Energized Woman. So if you want to feel more energized and healthier in your everyday life, you can find the link in the description. So I am making Greek meatballs over rice with some delicious simple toppings. And this is a recipe that often, if I'm in a rush or just not feeling up to making meatballs, I will skip a few steps just to make it even easier and faster. On this day, I went all out, but you'll see in the next recipe, there's another example of how I took a shortcut when I needed to. Anyway, we'll get there. Ground meat is a relatively inexpensive option for a protein, and it's filling and super versatile. When you're making meatballs, it's just meat and a couple eggs, maybe some breadcrumbs or oats, and simple seasonings. Rice is inexpensive, and I use homemade bone broth to add some extra nutrition. This sauce I'm making is just Greek yogurt, lemon juice, and some seasonings, garlic, dill, salt, and pepper. And when I'm making this meal and cutting corners for some reason, I don't even make the sauce. We just put a spritz of lemon juice over our whole dish, and that gives it the tang that it needs. The other shortcut I often take is cooking all that meat in a big pot, not forming it in meatballs. It's way faster. So I took a similar shortcut in this next meal, which was supposed to be Salisbury steak, which is just a seasoned ground beef patty in gravy, really. And I didn't have a lot of time and patience for forming patties on this day. So I decided I'm just going to throw all that meat in a pot and cook it, and it'll be just cooked ground seasoned meat in gravy instead of patties in gravy. And that saved me the step of forming the patties. And again, I'm just using a lot of those really simple ingredients I already have on hand: onions, garlic, homemade bone broth. We are making peas as our vegetable, and I just always have a few bags of peas in the freezer. And we are having mashed potatoes to serve with this ground Salisbury steak. So I hope this confirms to you that a meal does not have to be pretty. This is not a pretty meal. It's just a bunch of ground meat with gravy on some mashed potatoes and peas. But it is nourishing, it is friendly to our budget, and it's really yummy, even though the presentation is not to a standard that I would love to have. But in this season of life, I'm totally okay with tasty, nourishing meals that don't look amazing. All right, on to our last meal, which is a cozy, comforting chicken soup. Now, I am using a whole chicken that we raised on our property this year. It was our first year doing meat chickens, and this one was pretty small. It was 3 pounds, and I'm giving it a good rinse inside and out just because this was our first time doing chicken processing, and we had some troubles that I won't go into, but I just wanted to make sure it was nice and clean. Pop that thing in the crock pot and season with some salt and pepper, and then I just added some water, about, half to 2/3 up the chicken, and cooked that on high for about 3 hours. Soup is a fantastic option for when you're really trying to stick to a budget, because you can use whatever protein, whatever carb, whatever vegetables you have on hand or are on sale or are seasonal. And this is honestly how I make most of my soups. I just throw in whatever I feel like. And so on this day, I chose to do a chicken and potatoes for the carb, along with some onion and peas and frozen spinach for the veggies. Other carb options that I often use are rice or quinoa, and then some other veggie ideas: celery, carrots, really whatever is cost effective and in season you can throw into a soup. So I threw the potatoes and veggies in after the chicken had been cooking for 3 hours. I thought it would take longer for the chicken to get nice and tender, but the chicken was done at this point. So I took it out and shredded it up. I divided the bones away and I'm putting that away for making more broth with it, and also had a little pile of skin to give to the dog. I put the meat in the fridge until the potatoes were done cooking. I didn't want to put it back in and overcook it. And then I also added some elk meat that I had left over from a different meal because there really wasn't enough chicken. We like to eat a lot of protein. So I hope you enjoyed these ideas, and let me know in the comments which one you're going to try. And also let me know what budget meals are your go-tos. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.